Hello everyone, welcome back. So there are a lot of things a movie can do wrong. It can be messy, confusing, even a little ridiculous and still be entertaining. But one thing that's almost impossible to ignore, being boring, and unfortunately Mermaid falls right into that trap. This Florida set horror comedy has an interesting premise, a solid cast and just enough weirdness to make you think it might actually work. But somehow it ends up being none of those things it promises. It's not scary, it's not funny, and worst of all, it's just dull. The story follows Doug, played by John Pemberton, a socially awkward, struggling guy living on the Florida coast. His life is already falling apart. He's dealing with addiction, he's lost his job, his relationship with his daughter is basically non existent, and he's just drifting through life with no real direction. Then one day everything changes. He finds a wounded mermaid floating in the water, and not the kind you are probably imagining. This isn't some magical, beautiful creature. This is disturbing, almost grotesque version, scaly, fanged, and more unsettling than anything else. Doug takes her home, names her destiny, and keeps her in his bathtub. And that's pretty much where the movie stalls, because what sounds like a bizarre and potentially wild setup never really evolves into anything interesting. Instead of chaos, tension, or even dark humor, we get series of slow, awkward moments where Doug just exists around this creature. He sedates her, talks to her, projects his loneliness onto her, but there's no real development, no strong real narrative momentum. It just kind of sits there. At one point, the movie tries to shake things up by having Doug dress her like a terrible disguise and takes her to his daughter's birthday party. And you would think, okay, this is where things get crazy. But even that moment, which feels like it should be outrageous and memorable, just falls flat. It leans into this gross out humor, but without any real comedic timing on payoff. And that's the kind of story of the entire film. It keeps setting up moments that should work and then completely fumbles them. Tonally, it's all over the place. It doesn't fully commit to horror. It doesn't fully commit to comedy, and it definitely doesn't succeed as a character drama. It just floats awkwardly between genres, never really finding its identity. Even when the plot tries to move forward, bringing in outside characters who randomly discovers a mermaid, it feels forced, like the movie suddenly remembered it needed a story. There's an attempt to shift it into crime thriller territory, but by that point, it's already too late to care. What makes this even more frustrating is the cast. Johnny is genuinely talented. If you've seen him in Superstore, you know how effortlessly funny and likable he can be. But here he's given a character that's not just dull but borderline uncomfortable. Doug isn't charming or sympathetic. At times, he actually comes across as creepy, and because of that, it's hard to connect with him on any level. You don't root for him, you don't understand him, you just kind of watch him and wait for something to happen. Robert Patrick also shows up as a local gangster, and while he brings some presence to the screen, even he can't do much with the material. You can feel the potential for something more, especially in the dynamic between this character, but the script never allows it to develop. And then there's the setting. The film's open by calling itself a love letter to Florida, but honestly, you wouldn't know it. Florida is such a vibrant, chaotic, visually rich place, and the movie barely uses it. It feels generic, like the story could have taken place anywhere and nothing would change. The one area where Mermaid actually delivers the creature design. The mermaid itself is genuinely unsettling. The makeup efforts create this strange mix of aquatic and reptilian features, scaly skin, sharp teeth, barnacle like textures. It's gross, it's memorable, and easily the most interesting thing in the entire film. But even that isn't enough to save it, because the creature isn't really a character, it's more like a prop, a weird, unsettling presence that never gets depth or development it's need to actually matter. By the time the movie reaches its final stage, it feels like it's still trying to figure out what it wants to be. That's it. Thank you for watching. Bye.